So Allah says, Ya ayyuhal insan. Even the word used for us is insan. And insan comes from, it's arguable from multiple roots. One of them is nasiya, the one who forgot. Right? The insan is the creature that forgets. The sun doesn't forget that it has to be in obedience to Allah. The ant doesn't forget. The rock doesn't forget. The cattle doesn't forget. But أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. Or even far. They forget. They forget. So we forgot what purpose we were put on this earth for, and Allah Azza wa Jal uses that name that reminds us of our forgetfulness. Also, some argue that it comes from uns, which is like to have affection. So we develop affection for things other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it makes us forget our real purpose in life. The two are connected. Ya ayyuhal insan. Ma gharraka bi rabbika al-kareem. A raw translation would yield, what deluded you? What manipulated you? What conned you? There are different words for deception in the Quran. Just to name a few, there's gharra, khada'a, right? Khana, like khiyana, khadala, khatara. There are different kinds of words used for deception in the Quran. The specific one used here is gharra, gharra. Now what does gharra specifically mean? It's when you take someone who's careless, like a tourist, and you con them to get something out of them. They're not really watchful about what they're doing and how they're spending and how they're behaving, then somebody can come and take advantage of them. Now when the human being is not careful, who takes advantage of him? The shaitan. The shaitan. And you know it is that shaitan who fed him that line that was used in the previous surah. What was the deception that most people fell victim to that Allah addressed? Allah Azza wa Jal told them the people, وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. And He said, وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ شَيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. This is not the word of a cursed devil. He's not insane. But you know when you let shaitan in, when you're not careful, then he'll feed even the worst lies against the truth to you, and you'll believe them. So these people fell into that trap. Here Allah says, مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ. What deluded you? What conned you away from your gracious Lord? Now, Allah Azza wa Jal didn't even say, what deluded you from Allah? He didn't say that. مَا غَرَّكَ بِاللَّهِ. No. مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ. What deluded you from your Lord? The word Rabb necessarily illustrates a relationship. Illustrates a relationship. You know, the word Allah is lafz al-jalala. It is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the proper name. Of course, it's argued that it's rooted in the word ilah. But the word Rabb, to help you understand, it's a word it necessarily denotes a relationship. For example, when you say teacher, what do you think of on the other side? Student. When you think of master, on one side, what do you think of on the other? Slave, servant. When Allah calls Himself slave and doesn't even say master, He didn't say Rabbi samawat wal ard, Rabbil alamin. What did He say here? Rabbika, your Lord. To give you a simple parallel of what's going on in this text, you're about to be fired. Because you don't, pay attention to the instructions of your boss. You show up to work 3 hours late. He tells you to do A, you do B. He tells you to do B, you do C. You don't pay attention. You're about to be fired. The boss comes to you and he doesn't want to be mean to you or anything. But he's curious. Why are you so messed up? So the boss comes to you and says, so what was it? What was it that was distracting you from my instructions? You understand? We had a standing relationship. We had an agreement. وَقَدْ أَخَذَ مِيثَاقَكُمْ. The covenant was already taken. The promise had already been taken. You already made this promise to me that you'll be my slave. أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى. Am I not your Lord? Am I not your master? We said yes, of course. There wasn't any confusion. Then what was it that confused you from your job? What was the distraction? Now at your real, job in dunya, maybe it was YouTube or it was like, Facebook or something. You were making calls to overseas or something at your job that deluded you. But in this context, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ. It is the other things in this world that people are running towards, and then because of them, they don't turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what's beautiful here is they were turning away from the messenger in the previous surah. The people were turning away from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the previous surah. In the surah before that, they were turning away from the Quran. When Allah says, فِي صُحُفٍ مُطَهَّرَةٍ بِأَيْدِي سَفَرَةٍ كِرَامٍ بَرَرَةٍ, they were turning away from the revelation itself. Here, they're turning away from who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're Rabb. They've forgotten the root of the problem. Why are they turning away from the messenger? Why are they turning away from revelation? Because they have no concern that they have a master. That's why they're distracted by other things. بِرَبِّكَ. And then Allah didn't just say Rabbik, He said بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ. Kareem, noble, gracious. When we talked about this, when the teacher is nice and he's noble, what does the student do? Starts taking advantage and starts getting deluded into conning himself into thinking that they can get away with whatever. Because he's a nice, come on, he's so kareem. Out of his nobility, out of his grace, he's not going to punish. And when that noble teacher, that graceful teacher, before he hands you your F and he calls you and he says, listen, I was nice to you all along. Why did you do this? You will feel far worse with that teacher than the teacher who was mean to you, because he'll feel, I was expecting him to fail me anyway. I don't feel that bad because he's not a nice guy. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is failing these people. He's failing, and He's asking them in such a loving, introspective fashion. They have to look deep inside of themselves when He says, مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ. What was it? Was it the love of money? Was it your family? Was it the love of your own pathetic desires? Was it the love of wasting time? What was it that took you away from your gracious Lord? He gave you so many, out of His grace, He gave you so many things. And one of the things here, the use of the word Kareem, Allah is Kareem, and out of His karama, He gave karama to the human being. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam. We honored the human being. And so part of that honor is coming in the next ayah. How did Allah show His grace to you? الَّذِي خَلَقَكَ. He's not just your Lord, not just that He has that relationship over you that you're the slave. On top of this, الَّذِي خَلَقَكَ, the one who created you. فَسَوَّاكَ. Then He, taswiya in Arabic has multiple meanings. One of them is to equate and to fix everything up perfectly. But another is to actually tweak and to take care of the finest details and to make sure everything's just the way it's supposed to be. You know what image comes to mind because it's in the news a lot nowadays? All these car companies? Right? And they show these factories. Hopefully they don't let the car out of the lot until they check the brakes and they check everything. They tweak. Allah speaks about the tweaking of the human being. He created you. Didn't just create you. He fine-tuned you. Taswiya. Fasawwaka. And then finally, fa'adalak. He balanced you. Now this word is very powerful, adl. He balanced you in that, we're a balanced creature. We walk on 2 feet. We have balance, Our ears actually are a big place of our balance. When there's fluid in our ears, we get dizzy and stuff. Right? So this is a place of balance. But even in the figurative sense, He balanced us. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. There's a balance between those two things. Everywhere in the Quran you find, this discussion on guidance, you'll find a balance. He balanced our motives between running towards, the paradise and running away from what? The hellfire. He balanced us. He balanced us between our personal obligations and our obligations to our family and the world at large. Personal obligations, collective obligations. It's a balance. In so many ways, He balanced you. And He gave you a sense of balance also. فَعَدَلَكَ. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions this in another place. He says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Right? Surah At-Tin is coming up later on in the series. We created the human being in the best possible fashion. And what is that best possible fashion? الَّذِي خَلَقَكَ فَسَوَّاكَ فَعَدَلَكَ.